Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Shouting from the Sidelines. It's just me today, it's Luke from Foot Tech, and we're going to talk about something we've been researching for a number of years now. We're going to talk about different types of sports, multi-sport, the benefits that can have on young footballers or young people involved in any sport, really. And we're going to talk about three things, three sort of pillars, foundations that we think if you can get the mix right, it's going to give your child that little bit more of an advantage, I guess, when it comes to their chosen sports for the future. And if nothing else, it's going to keep them involved in sport and physical activity for longer, for reasons why we'll explain. So we spent quite a bit of time looking at multi-sport and read a few books, looked at a few papers and so forth, which when we started peeling away at it, it seemed that there was a lot of evidence suggesting that top level athletes in a variety of sports actually played a mix of sport when they were younger. And we spoke about this on other podcasts to some extent. The list of these people was long, really long, and involved some of the top level pros in their chosen fields. You're talking the likes of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady. From a football perspective, it was players like Gareth Bale, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Wayne Rooney. It wasn't just one or two. The list went on and on and on. It included golfers, tennis players such as Djokovic and Federer, top-level Olympians, gold medal Olympians. And the more that we got into this, the more exciting it became, really. And we've sort of looked at it and thought we believe there's probably three pillars to this. And the three pillars are, you have your chosen sport. So for a lot of people listening to this, it'll be that your child's chosen sport at the moment certainly is probably football. You then have something that's been termed a donor sport. So this would be another activity that maybe links to the chosen sport. The third pillar, which is something we've sort of have maybe added to this and we see it as a massive foundation of the overall, is play. And again, we'll get on to our meaning of play shortly, but the three there are chosen sports, donor sports, and play. So, like I said, we know what a chosen sport is. That's the field that we want to go down. But donor sports. Now, the research that we looked at was looking at how different sports can influence the chosen sport. So, take football. Football's an invasion game. So what else could we play, get involved with, that would link to that particular sport? So there you're looking at things like perhaps basketball, hockey, rugby, those sorts of things. But then you could also look at it from an individual perspective as well. So maybe something like gymnastics, where a young footballer would develop a solid core. They'd be a little bit more agile, a little bit stronger, which in turn is then going to help their football. Tennis, again, maybe tennis could be the donor sport because of the random varied movements that tennis players have to do. Is very similar to football. It's not just running in straight lines, it's very much an agility-focused sport. So the research suggested that players that had undertaken different sports in their youth actually went on to these higher levels in terms of their chosen sports. So for us as parents, it's looking at, can we get our children involved in other activities, in other sports? It may be that you're really keen on them getting to the top level of whatever they're involved in, but what we're sort of trying to educate our members on is this is all about keeping our children active, keeping our children in sport for as long as possible into adulthood, and getting them involved in another sport could actually help that for reasons why we'll come on to in a second. But it could be that having these other things to get involved with actually keeps them involved in sport, whether they get to a top level or not. It keeps them involved for longer. So let's talk a little bit about that. Why I guess a mix of sports is better. As we say, it's been proven amongst many athletes that that helped them. There's lots of quotes and lots of stuff that we can present to anybody that would like to know more about that. We've also seen recently that there are academies getting involved in this as well. So I think it was Burnley FC were looking at having a multi-sport element to their curriculum for their academy players. Perhaps the most prominent proponents of this were Ajax. The Ajax team that got to the Champions League semi-final a few years ago was a mix of players who had come through their academy system and had actually undertaken this multi-sport element to their education. So they weren't just playing football every single day. They were doing football and getting what they need from that side of things on the coaching, but then they were also exposed to a lot of different things, a lot of different movement possibilities by playing different sports and different activities. The guy that sort of founded all this was working with the Dutch national team, and he just said that the benefits of this were huge. You could see that they moved in a lot of different ways. It helped things like injury prevention as well. So these guys, these lads were exposed to these different sports, which then meant they were enjoying it more, number one, but they were having less injuries. They were able to move in lots of different ways, which obviously helped them on the football field. And eventually they've got to the first team of Ajax and then went nearly all the way at the Champions League. Were one of the most exciting teams to watch at that point. Certainly four of those players, have now gone on to bigger and better things. You look at Donny van de Beek, for example, at Manchester United, not having the best of times there, it must be said, but he got that big money move. Frankie de Jong got his move to Barcelona. Matthias de Ligt ended up getting bought by Juventus. So these are three of the players that went through this system and are now at the elite level. So that in itself tells us that there's something in this. The other thing to think about with this is, for our children, it's an opportunity for a release. If you've got a football mad boy or girl and all they're doing is football, or you're a parent that wants them to do football 5, 6, 7 times a week, think about the times when they are maybe going through a bad patch, and it happens to anyone, child or adult, and you think about maybe they've had a couple of bad games, a couple of bad training sessions. For them to then have to go to another football session the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that, when they're having this bad run of form, nothing will go right for them, maybe they've had a couple of knocks at training, someone said something to, whatever it might be, for them to then have to go to football again, it becomes tiresome. The enjoyment factor decreases, and that there is a red alert for us to be thinking, right, we need to do something about this, because otherwise we're probably going to lose them. So having a different sport to go to, a tennis, a gymnastics, a rugby, whatever, with different people, it's a release in many ways. Football, possibly their chosen sport, whatever your chosen sport is, put your energy into that. That's the serious stuff, maybe in inverted commas. We'd never say it should be serious at the child level, but we know kids take it seriously. We know some adults take it too seriously. That's their chosen sport. That's what they're really focused on. But then to have something that they can go to where they can be more relaxed. They're not too fussed about being picked for a team. They're not there to be assessed. They're not interested in that. They can just literally go and play something different with different people, different friends, different coaches. That could be really powerful. It can be a good release for them. And that's massive. We need that as adults. We need that release from work every now and again, or whatever else we do. Children need it as well. And to have that time where they're focused on something entirely different, they're present in that moment, not thinking about anything else, that can be really helpful for their overall enjoyment and keeping them in the sport longer term. The other thing is injuries. Now, it'll sound silly talking about injuries if we're dealing with 6, 7, 8-year-olds, certainly muscle injuries and things like that. It's rare. They'll probably tell you that this and that is aching, or they've pulled this and that because they see the pros doing it. But it is rare for a real serious injury to happen. But what will happen longer term is they're using the same muscles. They're doing the same movements time and time again. If you're playing football 5, 6, 7, 8 times a week, it ends up being a case of overuse. They've not had opportunities to move their bodies in different ways, or as many opportunities to move their bodies in different ways. So once they do start getting into that sort of early teens, it might be that they start to feel it a little bit more. It could be that they make a random movement and they pull a muscle simply because they've not really made that movement before. Whereas if they'd possibly been involved in other sports, they've moved their bodies in lots more different ways, so they can deal with that random movement when it comes. That in itself is important, because you could be dealing with the next Messi, but they won't be the next Messi if they're injured, and that is a huge issue. So it's important that we look at that and we understand how we can remedy it. It may be they need rest every now and again, obviously, but it's certainly getting involved in different activities, different sports can mean that they're moving the bodies in different ways, which helps them deal with those things when the time comes, when they maybe make that random movement. Instead of pulling a hamstring, they're able to deal with it. The worst case, as we sort of touched on before, is that they leave the sport. That's the big one. If they're frustrated with it and they're doing it time and time again, no matter how much they enjoy it at one point in time, they will get to the point where it becomes tiresome. Because you think about it structured. We're going to come on to play in a second, but if they're constantly at structured sessions, being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, over and over and over and over again, that can become tiresome and boring, especially if it's with coaches that adopt that approach and are trying to control everything. That can quickly become pretty boring, especially for a younger child. So play is the third one, and this is something that we've been looking at, and the benefits to it and why we as parents should promote it a little bit more. So what does play mean? Play in its simplest form is unstructured, no adults, children just being left to make up the rules, police it themselves, referee it themselves, and just play. Just do what they want to do, make up games and whatever, whether that's with the football, a rugby ball, a tennis ball, whatever it might be. Admittedly, these days, society, technology has changed the way that children play, and has certainly changed the amount of opportunities children have to play. And so we need to be clever with how we go about this, because it's still very, very important. You don't see children on the street anymore, just out playing football like we did. That was massive, absolutely massive for football development, certainly in any sort of sporting development. If you're outside playing with friends, that was huge. They don't get to do that anymore. So it's a case now of how can we make our children, how can we give them these play opportunities? Yeah, we can invite friends round and whatever else, and maybe get them in the garden and stuff. Brilliant. Try and do that. But then it's looking at maybe being clever with it as well, and that's where certainly we at FootTech are trying to do our bit. We'd read a while back that Feyenoord over in Holland, they'd started to open their academy gates earlier. I think it was, I don't know if it was half an hour or an hour earlier, and just had loads of balls on the pitches, and the players were able to come and just play. Just no coaching, no nothing, just pick up a ball, whether it be individual work or maybe some of them got together, played mini matches, wherever it might be, but they were just left to get that play time, which is so huge. We at FootTech, for any coaches listening to this, we at FootTech have been doing something for a number of years now where the children come, they arrive, and we put them into what we call arrival matches. Again, uncoached. We just stand back, we either just be quiet and shut up, or we're just encouraging, kicking balls back into them when they go out of play. Certainly with some of the older players in some of my sessions, I've left them to pick the teams and police it, referee it themselves. If one of them falls over, they get back up. It's funny when you let them do this. If there's a coach watching and they fall on the floor, they might have the little 30-second wobble and a little roll around like they see on Match of the Day and Sky Sports. But when we're not there, or when we're not sort of keeping a massive eye on it, you'll be surprised how quickly they get back up and play on. And again, very, very powerful, very interesting to see. But certainly with the older players, we sort of let them police it, let them make the game. Maybe they change the rules. At our camps, we let them have half an hour at lunchtime where they go off and they make up some games and so forth. So it is hard for many listening to this that maybe aren't at FootTech. It is hard because this is very alien to a lot of coaches, certainly at grassroots, because as soon as you say that word play, a parent thinks straight away messing around. A coach that's not well versed will think, no, they're messing around. I must tell them what to do. I must show them what to do. But there are huge benefits to that word and to allowing them to play with parental or adult involvement in some way now, because that's how society is. But we can still give them all the benefits of play, but with the added benefits of what we know now about child development and obviously safety and so forth, given that we don't want them out on the streets anymore till 10 o'clock and what have you. So you can be clever about it, and that comes down to you as a parent, maybe getting your children involved in the right team or in the right places, the right activity providers for your child and their chosen sport. But I'd hope that a lot listening to this, certainly if there's coaches out there, you'll see that there are benefits to little things like that, where you can just give them that 5 or 10 minutes where it is just unstructured, it's no coach involvement, they're just allowed to play the game. It's basically now, in terms of where we sit with this, that's some of the things that we're doing. We also started our speed training sessions. And I guess the fancy term for those would be our athletic development sessions. But if we say that to a child, they're not going to be that interested. Speed training, on the other hand, is like, wow, I'm going to get faster for football. That's really going to help my football. And this comes down to the part of like, okay, well, as a parent, how can I get my child involved in other sports if they're just football mad or rugby mad or tennis mad and they don't want to do anything else? They just want to football. Certainly kind of a couple of, and this is hard, I will not like, there's no sort of black and white to this, but some of the things that you can promote, things like I've just said there, is we started this session because we knew that children needed a release. They needed a different sport, they needed a different activity to help them with their football, but then help their overall physical development as well and mental well-being. So we set up speed trainings for that. We saw that a lot of the kids that were developing the fastest were the best movers, and the reason were the best movers were because they were exposed to different things. Maybe they had a lot of play time, maybe they were exposed to different sports, but whatever it was, they weren't just playing football 7 times a week. So we set up speed training for that, but we knew we had to convince the players and the children that it was this thing that was going to help their football. So that's the first thing. If you can talk to your child about stuff like this, where you're saying, look, I know you don't want to do it, but it is going to help your football. It's really going to help you develop your football faster. And rest assured, if you're picking the right activity with the right coaches, then your child's going to be loving it after a couple of weeks anyway. They'll probably forget that they didn't even want to go, but that's key. It has to be the right activity with the right people coaching it. If it's just a boring session, then you've struggled to get them there. You get them there to that first session and it's terrible, then they're not going to do that again. You've probably got a couple of chances with this, so it needs to be right. And you can speak to friends, people that are going to these activities, and you can quickly get some feedback and work out what might be best. After school clubs as well are great. A lot of the time, maybe it's a case of like it or lump it, they've got to go because you're working or whatever. But after school clubs, again, if they're done in the right way, they might have to stay, and therefore they're exposed to these different things. I'd definitely say giving examples of, from a football context, giving examples of professional players that have done this, and maybe pulling up some Google searches to show them, massively powerful. And you've got your Wayne Rooney's who did boxing, you've got your Zlatans that did martial arts. It goes on, Gareth Bale, rugby, James Milner, athletics. It just goes on and on and on. It won't take you long to provide a few examples. Maybe you can pick their favourite players and try and do a bit of digging to see what else they did as kids. But that in itself, if you put in one of their heroes in front of them that's done something like this, then that'll help you massively. Maybe getting friends involved. So if you've got one of their best friends that's also football mad, maybe speaking to their parents about them both going to a new activity. Maybe you've got friends, or they've got friends that are at different activities already that you can get them to. Having that friend there, it makes all the difference some of the time. It's never a bad thing seeing a familiar face. And it's that thing, that social side of it as well. If they see their friend doing it, then maybe they want to get involved as well. Going back to that, things like martial arts, fantastic. Again, moving your bodies in different ways, but you've got the discipline there as well. You've got a different sort of fitness. It's those things. It doesn't have to be a football, a tennis, a rugby, the traditional things. I guess it's a martial art is fantastic in many ways. So yeah, another example there. You can also help as parents with play in particular, and that could be getting out on bikes. That again, looking back at the Dutch stuff, they really promoted that. They promoted the bike thing, getting out on the bikes, maybe getting in the woods and stuff on the bike. So again, it's different movements, really powerful. But yeah, the play side in particular, just getting out and throwing and catching, setting up some assault courses, playing the floor is lava, these sorts of things. Just, it doesn't have to be that you're doing it for 2 hours a day, 20 minutes, something like that, just doing different things, but getting them out, letting them climb huge. And I know there'll be parents listening to this petrified of them going up a tree. I know my wife, when I'm doing these sorts of things with my two, she's having to bite her tongue because I'm making them climb and getting them up pretty high and all sorts of stuff that she would prefer them not to do. But in the grand scheme of things, it's massive. It's really going to help their development. So yeah, getting them, and dare I say it, soft plays, or maybe the Ninja Warriors of the world that are a little bit more for the older kids. Anything that you've got where you can take them, where they're moving in different ways, it's all beneficial. It doesn't just have to be sport specific all the time. But that's hopefully helpful, and you can see why it might be worth exposing your child to a variety of different things. Easier said than done sometimes, like I said, but there might be a few parents listening to this that believe to get better at something, get better at a sport, get better at football, they need to be playing football, training football 6 hours a day, 7 times a week, whatever it might be. Of course, there are benefits to that. Of course, you'll probably see some improvement, but there's maybe ways that you can be clever and actually develop them faster and keep them in the game for longer term. There's no point having the best player in the world if they don't want to play football anymore. If you've done a few bits of this, you're probably going to help them stay in the sport for longer. There are a lot of people that believe that their child should be training all this time. What I'd caveat to that is that if your child was playing football, not training, playing football, maybe out again on the street, if you live in an area that's fine with that, or a local park with friends, that is very different. That is very different. That could actually be helpful. I'd still say maybe getting involved in other sports is going to be good. Maybe they'll play other sports with their friends when they're out, but that is different. What we're talking about here is if you've got your child in a structured session, a structured training session, maybe playing for 2 teams, maybe they're in some development centre, whatever it might be, and they're training all the time, they've got matches all the time. That in itself it can be fine, but it's not going to be as beneficial longer term as to exposing them to the play side as well. So just have a think about that. And as I say, certainly at FootTech, this is something that we've taken on board, and we've adapted our sessions now whereby it's a lot more street football focused. It's got that vibe to it where it's, yes, there's adults there, there's grown-ups there that are guiding and coaching, but we're doing it in such a way whereby the children are exploring a little bit more. We're trying to be less involved, stopping every 2 minutes. Not that we ever did that, but you'll see this at any session on grassroots, stopping every 2 minutes to tell these kids how much they're not doing right and whatever. We're at FootTech now trying to make these activities that are street related, so there's loads going on, but we're guiding. We're trying to guide more. The coaching and the pre-planning of these sessions is the hardest part now, because we've got to try and make it all unique to each individual child and guide them at the sessions. And yeah, of course, we're going to have to stop it from time to time if they're not getting it or whatever, but we're trying to pull them out for individual chats and one thing or another, as opposed to the traditional ways. This way is better. and there's no doubt about that. And it will turn. I think that we will see this adopted more in grassroots and promoted more in grassroots, but it'll be years off. So if you're a parent listening to this, hopefully that's helped. As always, we're here to help. If there's any questions, you want some more advice, you don't agree, please shout up. Let's talk. It's always good to get different opinions. But certainly any parents out there that are maybe wanting to do something like this and want to understand more and how, please just get in touch. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon.